Welcome to Crafting Changes Quick Class. Today we are going to learn to sew fleece fingerless gloves with binding. On the bottom opening of the glove, we are going to bind it with a strip of fleece to make the glove secure and hold it better to the wear and tear of pulling it on and off. For this project you will need a third of yard of polar fleece, which will make several pairs. You'll also need contrasting fleece to bind the bottom edge, or you can cut it out of the same material you're using for the gloves. Also your sewing machine, thread, scissors, pins, or clips. You will find links to the patterns on the project overview sheet. There are 3 adult size patterns to choose from, a small, average, and large. As an option, please note that on the small pattern, you can sew it with a 3/8 inch seam allowance instead of a 1/4 inch to make it smaller into a youth size. And on the adult large, you can make it into an extra large by adding 3/4 inch to the outside edge opposite the thumb. Also note that on the adult large, you will need to extend the bottom of the pattern 1 inch before cutting out. And once you've downloaded the pattern and printed it, check the test score to make sure it has printed correctly. Now, cut 4 glove pieces from your fleece, 2 fronts and 2 backs, which is enough for 1 pair. Make sure you have the greatest stretch going around the glove. For the bottom band, cut 2 pieces 2 inches wide by the length you need to go around the bottom. Small is 12 inches, average is 14 inches, and large is 16 inches, but check yours to be sure of the size. Also remember to cut your fleece strips crosswise out of your fabric so it has the maximum stretch. Before you start sewing, prepare your sewing machine. Use a ballpoint needle. Set the stitch to a narrow zigzag, lengthen out the stitch length, loosen the stitch tension if possible. If you need more help working with fleece, please refer to our other video on YouTube, Tips and Tricks for Working with Fleece. Now with the right sides together, stitch the 2 outer seams and then the V at the thumb. Make sure to line up the raw edges at the top and thumb hole openings and back stitch at the bottom of the V and at the beginning and end of the seams to secure them. Clip the V. The thumb opening we are leaving alone to reduce bulk and make it more comfortable for the wearer, so just clip your threads and double check that your stitches are secure. Clip the excess material away from the corners of the thumb. With the wrong side still facing you, fold under a 1/2 inch at the top hand opening of the glove, and with a medium width zigzag, center your presser foot over the cut edge so you are zigzagging over the raw edge to make a smoother finished hem. Put the contrast binding, right sides together, on the bottom of the glove. On the leading edge of the binding, pin it to the glove about 5/8 inch or so in from the end of the binding. This will be your beginning sewing spot. Start it next to the side seam of the glove, but not exactly on top of the seam, so as to eliminate excess bulk. Then pin or clip the binding around the bottom until you come back to the beginning. When you get back to where you started, stop and pin the binding right next to, but not overlapping, the beginning point that you've already pinned. Leave about 5/8 inch and cut off the excess of the contrast. Now sew the contrast to the right side of the glove using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Start at the first pin and go around to the ending pin, but do not sew over the flaps. Back tack at the beginning of the end. Bring the 2 flaps together and stitch them so the binding will lay flat against the glove, then trim the seam allowance to a 1/4 inch. Grade the seam allowance by trimming the binding close to, but not through, the seam. Pull the contrast straight up with your fingers, and then fold the contrast over to the back of the glove, making sure to encase the seam allowance inside. Feel with your fingers and push the seam allowance up so it's inside the contrast, and the contrast is laying flat against the inside of the glove. Now periodically check the width of the contrast so it stays consistent around the outside of the glove. Then place the glove under your presser foot, centering the needle over the seam, and stitch in the ditch using a straight stitch. Make sure the back side of the contrast band is smooth with no wrinkles. Still working on the right side of the glove, stitch another round of top stitching about a 1/4 inch away from the seam to keep the binding from rolling to the outside. I'm using contrasting thread during this demo so you can see the stitches, but you will probably want to use one that coordinates with your material. Turn the band with the wrong side facing you and trim off the excess contrast close to the stitching line. Keep your scissors almost flush to the fabric and go slow so you don't cut into any stitches. And there you go. Now all you have to do is go back and finish the second glove. I hope you've enjoyed our Crafting Change quick class on fleece fingerless gloves. Please let me know if you have any questions, and thank you so very much for everything that you do for Crafting Change and our partner charities.